Good evening, everybody. We are live right now, so let me introduce myself. My name is John Lohr. I'm the chair of the Millis Finance Committee, and today I'd like to call this meeting to order on Wednesday, March 19th at a little after 7. I got 7:01, so let's go with 7:01. But before we get going, I'd like everyone to introduce themselves. We got a full crew here tonight. Start off to my left.
Sarah Reyes.
Peter Underhill.
Joyce Boyardi.
Mike Crone.
Kathy McInnes.
Pete Berube.
We have a few FinCom members that are on Zoom right now. Jody, would you like to introduce yourself? Good job. Good job. I didn't want to take all the thunder away from you there. Anyway, also in addition, a few housekeeping items here. You can always watch the Millis Finance Committee meetings on your local access channels on Comcast Channel 6, I believe, and also Verizon Channel 38. Also available through the millismedia.org and live streaming on YouTube, as well as you can attend in meeting, which we don't have too many people tonight. And then last, all the material. And then last, all the material that we cover is available on the Millis website. So, without any, and last, whoever comes up to the table, make sure you speak into the microphones. Seems a little off. So we can have proper recording of our conversations and discussion. So, going off the agenda here, we don't have a few people, and we are going to skip over the street lighting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I did inform Mr. McKay that I would cover the first couple items for him this evening.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
So if I might,
The,
the
go ahead.
reserve fund for request, I did have a discussion with the DPW director, and we do have sufficient funding to do that street lighting project. This is a repair of approximately 40 streetlights that have gone out. And so that request is being withdrawn for the reserve fund.
Okay, so there's enough money to accomplish that, and there's no need to request any money.
We took a deeper look at it and determined we do have sufficient funding for that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that? I don't think so. So we are good. Oh, go ahead.
Where's it coming from?
He has monies in his equipment and maintenance line that are sufficient to cover that item. So after a further look, we do feel we have sufficient. If it becomes a problem towards the very end of the year, we'll reach back out to you, but we believe we have enough to cover it.
Okay, thank you. Next item?
Yes, the snow and ice. The select board approved this at their meeting on Monday evening. Although we didn't have any major snowstorms this year, we had 2 or 3 small to moderate storms. We had a number of ice incidents and freezing rain, which can be just as costly, if not more. Right now, I believe we're about approximately, I think you may have gotten some handouts from that.
We do. We have a list of the 53,000.
Yeah, 53,000 of current bills that are over our current budget.
Yep.
So the select board approved deficit spending of 75,000 for the snow and ice, so the director is requesting the same amount here from the finance committee.
Okay, and just to reiterate, once you increase the snow and ice, you cannot bring it back down, correct?
You have to give the same
Yeah,
amount
so
the
the
next
regular
year.
annual budgeting process, I mean, this reserve fund transfer won't affect it, but yes, if we were to increase this at the spring town meeting, we could never decrease it again.
Makes sense. Any questions? Okay, I think we're good with snow and ice. Oh, wait, Jody, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't have a problem with them spending in excess, but it doesn't look like this is presented to us as a transfer from the reserve fund yet, at least that's.
Yes, it is not a reserve fund transfer. It's really just an authorization to spend in excess. The snow and ice account is the only account that we have that we can spend into the red on, but it still requires the authorization of the finance committee and the select board.
So we need to vote on this?
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah,
have a
go ahead,
question I've
Kathy.
always wanted to ask of Mr. Kaczynski. On a snow and ice budget, can the Millis DPW staff, their salaries be included in that, or is it strictly non-town employees?
No, the staff can be included in that only for their overtime work for snow and ice work. So if they work overtime to overnight to salt the roads or to clear snow, then that can be paid out of snow and ice.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
since we're drilling into it a little bit,
Yeah.
I'd like to ask, if the authority already exists for spending in deficit for snow and ice, yet we're asking for FinCom or Select Board approval, wouldn't we do that before we do it, before we actually spend in deficit? Or is this just, and as Jody said, it's not, this isn't an appropriation or an authorization to pay it, that will come later with the reserve fund, so what exactly are we doing, and, or just why are we doing it now?
Well, you're formally just authorizing deficit spending. We haven't paid those bills as of yet.
Okay.
But historically, whenever there are necessary expenditures, I mean, we could have come back, a month ago when we were just near zero, but we really didn't know how much we were gonna need. I think at this point, there's a comfort level that we're not gonna need much more, for the rest of this, fiscal year. So, it's really just a timing thing.
Okay.
But, 75,000 historically is pretty low to be over, although the last 2 years we were actually within the budget, which has been pretty unusual. But it was really just a timing thing of kind of estimating the bills and, what would carry us through to the end of the year.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I move that we authorize the DPW to spend in excess the three following accounts: snow and ice wages, snow and ice stipend, snow and ice expenses, not to exceed $75,000.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve and vote that the DPW is available to spend in excess of the three following accounts: snow and ice wages, snow and ice stipend, snow and ice expenses, not to exceed $75,000. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No one? Abstain? No one. Motion passes. Sure.
Do you know if we need to sign? Looks like we do, so we'll sign.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know it's not formally on your agenda, but under new business, I don't know if you wanted me to just take a few minutes and talk briefly about the first draft of the spring annual town meeting warrant.
Yeah, do you mind waiting though?
No, not at all.
Okay. We don't have Jim here. John Stedman is not here yet, so we're going to move right into the school budget, actually. But I think it would be great if you could cover that after the school presentation.
My pleasure.
Okay. School, Bob, everybody?
Thank you, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we're going off of the school presentation, right?
Right, I have the slides, and I don't,
Deirdre, if you can hear us, can you allow Bob to share his screen for the slides?
So I thought I did.
okay, yeah, I think I got them.
But I can always click them on.
No, I think I have it.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, he's
Thank you,
got it.
Deirdre.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Dee.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Last Tuesday, I presented the budget request we had the budget hearing for before our school committee meeting. And so I'm here tonight to present to you a proposed budget request for FY '26. And during the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to, just ask at the time, or if you want to hold off until the end. And please, if there's anything that you have a question on or is not clear, feel free to just jump in. The timeline is, as you're aware, we're at the, basically, the March to May period, where we're meeting with you, and we're continuing to look at some of the variables that are still unknown, including, some of the funding questions. We will present a balanced budget in May at town meeting, and in June, once we have the final number, the school committee will approve a recast budget. The bottom line won't change, but some line items might change.
And just to go into the questions, will you address those variables that are unknown still in the
Yes.
presentation?
Yeah, during the presentation.
And before we get going, are the union contracts buttoned up or concluded?
We are still in negotiations with Unit A, which is our largest, which is the teachers, which is one of the
Okay.
unknowns
Yep, okay,
that still exists.
thank you.
Yep. Just as every year when we construct our budget, there are certain guiding principles that we prioritize. And in truth, some of these principles we've had to, compromise on as a result of some of our budget issues. And I don't have to tell the committee about some of the issues we faced over the past few years. But our principles are to support the highest quality educational programs and services possible, funding proposed curriculum development initiatives and instructional resources, enhance programs and support services to meet students' needs. There's nothing new in this, but we're not proposing anything new in this budget. Provide staffing levels that support reasonable class sizes at all levels, maintain the current level of services provided, support our contractual obligations, fund those things that we are mandated to fund by the state and federal government, and do everything we can to keep the building and grounds in good shape and safe for our students. And just a few slides on demographics and enrollment in our schools. You can see that on this slide we have 10 years ago and we have now. And in those slides, on this slide, you can see that the demographics in our town or in our schools is a changing demographic. And the Hispanic, quote-unquote, or Latino population is our largest growing. You can see there were 3.6% of the district was categorized by the state as Hispanic or Latino in 14-15. We're now at 11.3%. And some of these new students joining us are English language learners, require more support, require more federally mandated programs that we must provide. And then selected populations, you can also see over the last 10 years there's been tremendous growth in these selected populations. We've seen 72% growth in our high needs population. And high needs, any students who are categorized as English learners, low income, or students with disabilities, students on IEPs. So you can see that we've had significant growth in all of those categories. And to be categorized as high needs, a student can belong to any one or any combination of those. So you could have a high need student who is an English learner who's also on an IEP, but they only count as one high needs population, high needs.
And is it just low income or English learners? Or are there other categories that define high needs?
Yeah, just students with disabilities would be the other one.
Okay.
So kind of like kids on IEPs,
Yep.
English learners, and kids categorized as low income. And so we've seen tremendous growth in these areas. And again, a lot of these students have special needs that we are mandated to support and address. And I would say, you know, when you look at our numbers, one of the things that really jumps out is the students with disabilities. We've gone from 12.2% of our population to 20.9%. We're actually above the state average there for the first time that I can recall. And one of the things we're seeing is we're seeing more kids with needs, and the level of those needs is increasing. You know, it's a higher level of need than we saw 10 years ago. Some of the reasons that this is manifesting itself, just a little slice of what's happening in our schools. In 24-25, since October 1st, and this is as of probably around March 1st, so we've had even more students since March 1st, but this is from October 1st to March 1st. We had 31 new kids come into the district, and 12 students moved out, so, you know, net 19. But of the 31 who moved into the district, 48% of them were kids with IEPs. 45% of them were English learners. So, and then, you know, if you look at the bulk of these kids are coming into Clyde Brown, with 59% of the students who came since since October 1st having an IEP, and 53% of those kids requiring EL services. And again, a kid could be both. We have kids coming in who are English learners who are on IEPs. So, you know, you can see how that can impact what our numbers were compared to 10 years ago. And then also 2 out of these 31 students are out of district placements, which obviously, you know, comes with a cost to the school system.
Are those numbers, is there a reason why those numbers are high and coming to Millis versus going to other towns? Or do other towns share probably similar data?
I think I can't really speak to other towns. I know in speaking with our Director of Student Services, for example, you know, it's been relayed to her that this kind of stuff is happening in other districts as well. You know, it's not exclusively Millis, but I don't have hard numbers about other towns around us. But it's certainly, you know, impacting us, and certainly a factor in what's happened to our numbers in the last 10 years.
Excuse me, Bob.
Go ahead.
So when you define an IEP, how low does that go? I mean, we certainly know at the upper end what it means in terms of service and care.
Sure.
But to what lowest level would you consider someone an IEP?
Well, if they have a learning disability and are found eligible for services by a special ed team. So what generally happens is a student is identified as potentially needing special education service, specialized instruction. A team will meet, and that team includes, you know, the student's parents or caregivers, teachers, and special education staff. And they evaluate and analyze reports and data on that student. And the goal of all IEPs is to allow the student to work in the least restrictive environment that kid can be successful in. So, you know, to your question, Mike, at the low end, it could be you have a disability that impacts your math class. So you might get some extra help in math. You know, it wouldn't be a huge expense, but it would be an additional expense. And then, obviously, we know the other end when a kid is outplaced and it's costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there's a wide range there. And generally speaking, when a student's on an IEP and has a service in their grid, we are legally responsible to provide those services. When someone comes in from another district, with an IEP, we are legally responsible to provide the services that are in that IEP. And so, you know, when a kid moves in, that can make it very challenging if they have, you know, an IEP with a lot of services and things, and programs that we may not have. We have to figure out, okay, how are we going to provide these services?
But that doesn't apply to school choice, correct?
Well, right, school choice, none of these move-ins are school choice. And a school choice kid, if a school choice kid is on an IEP and requires extra services, the sending district is responsible
Oh,
for
okay.
those services.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Joyce, did you have a question?
Yeah, once a student has been put on an IEP and they've gotten the services, are they ever taken off that IEP?
Yeah, the goal for most kids, the goal is to get them off. And speaking as a parent, my daughter in kindergarten needed special services, got them. By second grade, she was off the IEP, and you know that's the hope. Some kids have needs that they're not gonna come off. So it again, like Mike's question, there's a wide range of potential outcomes with that.
Now, and I'm dating myself. When my daughter was in school, she needed assistance with reading.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't on an IEP, but she was taken out of the classroom.
Yep.
Given special services by Mary Alessi, bless her heart, and then brought back to the classroom. How was that taken care of?
Yeah, that's so.
And is that still happening?
Yes, that's happening. So there's tiers of support. So there's the first tier is things that are done in the classroom that every student, benefits from, and accommodations that any student can access. Then the second level, which sounds kind of like what your daughter, if you need help in reading, we have reading interventionists, and we have tutors, and we have things like that. That's tier 2 services. We do have those, but if you recall, we had to cut 2 interventionists last year at Clyde Brown and 1 reading specialist. So we have those. We don't have them at the level we had a year ago. But we still have that. So we have some students at that tier 2 level. And then tier 3 is when you start getting into IEPs and things like that. You know, and again, the important thing with students with disabilities is we try to educate them in the least restrictive environment. And that means the more we can have them in the regular classroom and be able to access the curriculum and be successful, you know, that's what we want. And so when a kid goes through the process, sometimes the first IEP has certain accommodations for the student, and if the student is successful, then, you know, it stays that way, and, you know, maybe over time, some of those supports aren't needed anymore, and they kind of, you know, fall off the IEP, and eventually the kid gets off the IEP. On the other hand, a kid can go in and have a certain level of accommodation, and the accommodations aren't allowing the kid to access the curriculum, aren't allowing the kid to be successful, then you have to ramp it up. And so some IEPs become more restrictive, but the goal is to be the least restrictive as possible.
Mr.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Just along those lines, because you had to cut some of the interventionalists, do you believe that maybe some of the children that got placed on an IEP for this year was the result because they didn't have that non-IEP help last year?
Yes, and I think it was with the select board, we kind of talked about some of the issues before the override vote. And at that time, it was probably sometime in October. And in October of 2023, we had 10 students who had been referred for special ed services at Clyde Brown. In October of 2024, we had 18 kids who had been asked for services. So, you know, a pretty big growth. Is it all attributable to not having the interventionists? I can't say, but I think there's definitely, you know, a correlation there.
Yeah, I would be curious to see, like, if there was ever a percentage, just because I know that I, along with other people, were saying this is going to have a direct, you know, effect on kids who aren't on the IEP level yet.
Yes.
That can
Yeah.
still get help in school and kind of, get through the
Right.
issues.
Yeah.
Even if it's like math or reading or something. So I'd be interested to see how much of a cost difference now, how much are we now paying for the services for an IEP, or maybe, I probably didn't reach the level of district, but, versus having the teacher there in class.
Right, yeah, and I think that was something that we could see potentially happening. A lot of those services allow, gives the kids what they need, the intervention services, to get them up to grade level, and then once they're at grade level, they're doing it. When you don't get as many kids up to grade level, then they fall further behind, and that's, when these kind of serves, the level 3 interventions, the IEPs can come into effect,
Thank you.
Go ahead, Pete.
Mr. Mulaney, good evening. On your stats that you presented, actually, I'll go back a little further. Your demographics, populations, and data are usually based on population of the school at the beginning of the school year, roughly.
Right.
So going forward, I'm assuming that on your data that you're going to tell us about does not include these late move-ins that are on this slide number 7, or are they?
The FY, when we get into enrollment, they do include these kids.
Okay.
They're still a little short because we've had kids since.
Just
but-
recently? Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to know where perspective is.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to keep going down the IEP path here, is there a general, do you know what that cost is for that category? For
all-
IEPs?
all-
Like, it costs Millis X dollars to.
Yeah, well, we have that in
I didn't know
later,
if-
in that we kind of break it down, not
Okay,
including salaries,
okay.
but expenses
If,
from
yeah,
from
just if
special
you could
ed.
mention it as we go by it, I was looking for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's one of the last slides when we just look at the allotments of the proposed budget.
Okay, thank you.
Whoops. And to Mr. Berube point, here we have enrollment over the last 10 years, and we can see that there was a decline and then kind of a flattening of the curve. And right now, I think we're actually at 1,183 students, not counting the 5 ties students. But, so we're pretty much on par with where we were last year. And the most current numbers, we have 620 kids at Clyde Brown, 267 at the middle school, 296 at the high school, and 5 at ties in the out-of-district. Our out-of-district numbers are the same as they've been. We're at 23 kids. So we see the enrollment kind of flatten. And then the New England School Development Council is an organization that predicts, does projections for enrollment. And so for the next 10 years, NESDEC has projected pretty level enrollment in the Millis schools. Their projection for this year is a little low. We're at 1183. They projected 1166. How that impacts projections down the line. They do the study every year, so we get kind of more up-to-date information. And they use data on like single-family homes and things like that, but they don't necessarily look at multifamily units, and so that could impact our enrollment moving forward over the next 10 years. Not necessarily the FY26 budget, but down the road. And in this next slide, this is something that Chief Barrett provided me with, just the housing units that are looking, that, may be onboarded in Millis within the next few years. And this is very unscientific. It's just, if you imagine those units at 2.75 people, assuming the .75 is a school-age child, or a little less conservatively, if you imagine those units at 3.5 with the 1.5 people per unit being school-age kids, we're looking at the potential of, 400 to 800 new kids in our schools moving forward. So that's, something we want to consider. Again, really doesn't impact our FY '26 budget, but it could impact us down the road.
And just to verbalize, but that 400 to 800 number represents this town growth on this slide versus what the NESDAQ was forecasting.
Correct, yes.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah,
I have a little trouble with the slide,
okay.
I do too.
because it's not, I mean, I appreciate the data and certainly.
It's
the attempt to
unscientific.
project-
Yeah.
Unscientific, and just, one of them is clearly wrong.
Which one?
Is that,
Either the previous slide or this one, the NESDEC data or this one, because you can't add, this implies that we're gonna grow the school by 400 students when those units are done
Correct.
in the next year or two. And to
Correct.
put that out there causes probably some undue scrutiny.
certainly
Yeah.
not my intention.
And I'm not saying, I'm
Yeah,
not trying to criticize
Yep.
anybody, but I would hate for that to happen unduly, and so, I don't know, I don't like this slide.
It's unscientific, but I think
But,
there will be an impact on the schools when all these come
No
online.
doubt.
but does it include the variable that's not in the previous slide? To a degree.
I think you find too that most of these are apartments, and history has shown that most of the apartments do not produce the type of kids, numbers of kids that single-family houses do. So your numbers are probably pretty bold, but nonetheless, you're making a point that, yes, we have a lot more housing coming on. Hopefully, this housing that's coming on is new growth and produces new taxation, which may be able to pay for some of the expenses that are associated with this type of increase.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I wonder if the school you're proposing is going to be too small in a few years. But that's another day.
I mean,
Thank you.
honestly, and when you look at the original building, it was built in 1960, they had to add 10 classrooms in 1966. So it happens.
Yeah, and, isn't Clyde Brown at the max right
Yeah,
now?
Clyde Brown had a design enrollment of 545 kids. We have 619 there now.
Good point. Good point.
Will the foundation hold a third floor?
That was my idea, put another floor on, but they said,
Build up
no, you
instead of
can't
out."
do that. And here's just our school population. Pre-K has 52 kids. Pre-K and kindergarten really aren't accurate predictors of the next level. Just for example, pre-K, 3 years ago, we had more pre-K kids because we had an additional pre-K teacher. We had to cut one teacher back in FY '24, so our pre-K numbers are lower than they'd been, a couple of years ago. Kindergarten, we have 80 students. Doesn't mean we're gonna have 80 kids in first grade next year. We'll probably have more, but, so kindergarten's not a great predictor of first grade, but once you get beyond that grade, once you get into first grade, second grade, it's a pretty good predictor of what the enrollment for the next year's class is gonna be. So, if you look at, the early elementary grades, we have, pretty large class sizes.
And what happened in grade 5?
Grade 5, every kid, there was 31 kids that moved in, many of them went into the 5th grade. And the 5th grade is our largest class. It'll be moving up to the middle school next year. So next year, the middle school will have a very large 6th grade and a very large 8th grade class. The Clyde Brown classes, as I said, with the exception of grade 4, the Clyde Brown classes are pretty full. And then in the high school, our enrollment is low compared to prior years. One thing I will say is if you look at like the grade 9 class and the grade 11 class, when those classes were in first and second grade, those class sizes were in the 70s. And so, you know, that wave where we see 95 in first grade, I think it's actually 96 today, but that wave is going to come eventually to the high school. And so the 68 and 66 probably are going to, you know, we're not going to have many classes in that range once we get into the current grade 7 moving into the high school.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, someone else. Is pre-K required by
No.
state statute?
No,
Okay,
no.
thank you.
Is kindergarten required?
Kindergarten they're not required to,
Right.
we're required to have it.
Understood.
A parent is not required to send.
Send them.
What happens a lot of times is parents will send their kids to like a private kindergarten for a variety of reasons. So there are some kids that will be in next year, grade 1, that we haven't met yet. And pre-K, a lot of the students in pre-K are kids who have been, who are receiving services from early intervention. And we're required to educate those kids. And what we do is we have typical peers with them. So, you know, theoretically, we could have a number of kids move in at the pre-K age, and and if they needed services, we'd have to provide another pre-K class. But again, that's just speculate, that's, you know,
Yep.
that's hypothetical.
I
ahead,
wonder,
Joyce.
Mr. Chair, how the other towns that do not, and there are some that don't require PK, how they address that same issue.
I
Yeah.
Yeah.
can't speak to that, I can.
Thank
try to
you.
figure
Good
that out.
question. Go ahead, Joyce.
Currently, the pre-K, those are 2 classrooms that you have for pre-K though, right, for the 52?
Right, yes, yeah, and there's it's 2 classrooms, and there's a morning and an
An afternoon.
afternoon group. Yeah. And not every kid comes in every day, too. It's,
Is there a fee associated with it?
yes, unless it's required, you
Means
know,
testing.
unless you have an, you know, early intervention.
Does the tuition charged meet the expenses?
Mr. Wigan, you want to field that one?
As compared to going
You have to
to
come
a
up to the
private
mic.
nursery
Sorry.
school?
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Hi, Mark Conroy, School Committee. So the tuitions that we charge for preschool, and it's the same for kindergarten, do not cover the entire, they don't cover the cost of the entire program. They do cover the cost of the individual student, but as Bob mentioned, in preschool and in kindergarten, there are students, and it's at age 2.9, if they have developmental issues that are identified by their pediatrician, they test in, we're required to let them into preschool. So the tuitions that we charge non-IEP students do not cover the cost of the IEP, cost related to the IEP students. So for example, if we cover half of the teacher's salary with the tuitions, half the room is on IEPs, half the room's not on IEPs. The other half that are associated with IEPs is covered through the regularly operating budget.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with kindergarten. So we charge the tuitions for pre-K and kindergarten.
Right, right.
Per-
That makes
is it-
sense?
We
Yeah.
charge the tuition for a half day. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Is it permissible to ask percentage-wise of how many are paying versus those that are on a IEP required?
I mean, I could find out that information. What I would say is, generally speaking, you can't have a class that's over 50% on IEPs, so it's a minimum 50% would be paying tuition. But I can get that information.
Thank you.
One
No,
last-
if not numbers, I can get
Oh,
you
yeah, no,
percentages.
that's fine. And what dictates the cost of those who are paying for pre-K? Who set that amount? Who sets the amount for, school committee does? Is it advisable to increase that rate?
Yeah,
You do?
voted on every year.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, the school committee reviews the tuitions every year, and what we've done in recent years, there were many years where we had actually been generating surpluses, so we didn't raise fees because we were already charging more than enough. We've moved to, if we've needed to, and now we've generally, at least the last couple of years, and some of them gone to like a 3% annual increase. So, but again, we're also very cognizant, as a committee, we have been very cognizant to not shift deficits created by one situation to tuition-based programs or fees simply because we can. We're not basically going to try and balance the budget on the backs of the relatively small population who's paying preschool, kindergarten, and athletic fees and bus fees. That's just not. So what we've done is maintain that. We've looked at the program in and of itself to ensure the tuitions were covering what they should be covering, and we've incrementally increased them in recent years, commensurate with, you know, what the actual cost has gone up.
Our pre-K for our schools, there are private pre-K, preschool programs. We're not, we're public. Are what's charged for pre-K with our school system, with the schools, equivalent to what's paid privately? Or are private far more than?
We're lower.
Yeah.
You are?
But we look at other public schools, what they're charging for that, you know, all that goes into when we determine the rates, but private ones would be higher.
But again,
Which makes sense.
the program in and of itself, for the population of students that would be paying tuition, the tuitions we're charging is covering it. So going
Gotta
down
talk
that
down,
path,
I can't hear 'em.
we would be balancing the budget on the backs of.
Right, it's not a
A
for,
small-
right, it's not a for-profit, I understand. I
And so-
just was trying to figure out.
But, yeah, but that's why. So, yes, we're lower than the privates, but,
You're
no.
meeting your need.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pete.
Thank you.
Could I ask, Mr. Mullany, if you could just finish what you were saying? You said that you review the tuitions, the charges around to neighboring public schools. Are we on par with them?
Yeah.
Are we are we a little bit below, or are we a little bit higher? How would you characterize it?
We were lower.
How much lower? 5%, 10%, 30%?
I think we should get some sort of.
I can get you the specifics, but we were lower in the last couple of years. The committee has made a effort to kind of put itself, you know, in the middle, if not maybe slightly above the middle of the pack as far as where fees are. Because again, their effort, Mark just explained it very well, is that they want to charge an appropriate amount, but they do not want to bounce their budget on the backs of the people who pay fees.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might
Yeah,
ask.
go ahead.
Is pre-K a lottery system?
No.
No, you know what I mean by the lottery,
Yeah,
that you,
yeah.
okay.
All right.
Okay. And then just, this next slide, just about class size. And, you know, as you can see, the elementary classes are pretty large. Once we get into 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and into the high school, these are just class sizes for a core class like math, science, social studies, English, or Spanish. At the high school, since we have all different classes and kids don't travel in groups, we have the range there. Our smallest core class is a class with 5 students in it, and that's unusual, but it was a scheduling situation with a chemistry class. And our largest classes, we have a couple classes at 28. We don't have any classes at 30 yet. This year, again, that's kind of reflects the current enrollment of the high school, which is under 300 for the first time in a number of years. So those are the class sizes.
I would imagine you have this slide every year, so we could see
Yeah.
with the cuts, the increase per
Yes,
grade.
yeah, yep.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Is the is the decrease due to population decrease? Or is the decrease due to students going to other school systems, private school, tri-county?
Yeah, I would say there's been an increase since last year in kids going to Tri-County. There's been a slight decrease, and I have some slides that show this, a slight decrease in kids going to private schools, minimal. And then the largest factor is population. Like, again, those classes that we have that are in the 60s in the high school, there were only 70 kids in those classes in first and second grade. So, it's, I would say it's more of a population thing. But, the concern is with, some of the cuts we've made, I think that does have an impact on maybe more kids looking at Tri-County or other schools, or more families looking at maybe private schools.
Do you anticipate, Tri-County is going to be a $290 million high school. Do you anticipate that when that comes online, there'd be substantially more kids looking at it?
Can we wait till the Tri-County slide? Because I think there's going to be a lot of, I have a
there's
few
a slide
questions.
here.
No, I was just talking about class sizes, but that's fine.
I'm sorry, yeah, but, okay. Is that okay? All right,
Yeah.
sorry.
And just, a couple things.
Deck you out.
When we look at the current grade 5, 27 kids per class there, and that's an average. This is where, another area where, the cuts have hurt us. We've had, back in FY '24, we had a Clyde Brown teacher who was teaching an additional section of the larger class. So in other words, we have 4 classrooms per grade level. We had a 5th teacher that we used to cover an additional class when a class was large. So that teacher's position was eliminated. So we only have 4 sections of grade 5 when, in the past, we would have had 5 sections, lower class size, and more support for those kids in grade 5. And, that can be seen last year when they were in grade 4. The MCAS scores for our grade 4 students last year were, the lowest among grade levels that took the MCAS. And part of that is definitely a function of not having that additional teacher.
Sorry, I was able to find the fiscal year '24 presentation. So the high school is 22 versus 28. So
22
maybe,
was the largest?
that's what it says. K to 12, 2023. So, clear increase
Yeah,
at the high school level, and you
Right.
gotta look as these grades change per year, so it's
Yeah.
not science yet.
Yeah, and certainly at the high school, we eliminated an English teacher's position, so our English classes are larger as well. We don't have as many sections.
Sounds good?
And then school choice, some of our students are choice students, and Millis gets roughly $5,000 a year for a choice student. Again, if that student receives special ed services, there's adjustments and things, so for some kids, we may get more than $5,000, but on average, about $5,000 per kid. And we see the numbers of choice students, kind of trending down. That's certainly impacted one of our revolving funds, our choice fund. In FY '25, we received $356,000 from the state in choice money. For FY '26, we're projected to receive $244,000. So a significant decrease there in choice funds, and you'll see the impact of that a little later when we look at our revolving funds and grants that have helped pay for things to offset operating budget.
Is that 111,000 difference or so part of the 330,000 shortfall?
Yes, yeah.
It's enough to-
We're
Primary driver.
shifting.
Yeah, agreed. Confirming.
We're shifting salaries that we used to cover in choice, having to shift them into the operating budget. And I'll, there's some slides that discuss
yep.
that. But obviously, choice funds have been really important to us over the years to help keep our operating budget within, reasonable, I would say, increases. And we have 52 kids that choice into our schools. We have 18 that choice out. So, when it comes to the choice, it helps us certainly more than it hurts us. And if we didn't have choice, our kids could still choice out. So choice, in my opinion, choice is a very good thing for the Millis Public Schools.
If I
Mr. Chair?
could-
Okay.
Go ahead,
No, no,
Cap.
your turn.
So how do you predict what's going to come in next September?
Well,
in terms of
it's
school
very
choice?
hard, because like last year, our grade 12 class had about 10 choice kids. We don't have room in our kindergarten, our first grade rather, to take in 10 choice kids. We have one choice kid in our, so that's a net loss of 9 kids. So we basically just project, what's in grade 11 will be our grade 12 choice next year, and so on. We really can't predict the lower grades, kindergarten, or rather first grade when they first come in, because we don't know. But what we do know is we can't take as many as we're graduating.
So is your school choice, is primarily starting in grade 1, or do you get them in 5, 6,
kids come in
7?
along the way, yeah. The school committee just voted last week to be a choice district again. And the only class that we're not accepting choice in, the only grade level, is our current grade 5. Then you have other things happen, like a kid living in Millis could move to Medway and want to stay in our schools, and they'd become a choice kid. And likewise, we could have a choice kid from Medway whose family moves into Millis, now they're no longer choice. So there's fluctuations that way, but it's not, we're not gonna have 91 kids choicing in next year, as we had back in 17, 18.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So would it be safe to say the increased class size, because of the layoffs, is directly impacting our ability to have school choice students come in and revenue for the schools?
I would say, yeah, like if you look at grade 5, certainly.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I
this
think you could
committee can say,
also-
I told you so?
I think you could also,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the Tri-County,
Oh, I had another.
Oh, yeah,
question.
sorry, Kathy, yeah.
I'm talking to the
can-
people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm like, it's
I know how we all voted. I'm just,
Go ahead, Kathy.
All set? Everybody done? Do you accept students from towns that do not have school choice?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And then Tri-County was brought up earlier. This year, we have 43 students at Tri-County. And, the trend had been down in the last few years, but now we see it ticking up a little bit. Last year, we only graduated like 1 or 2 kids from Tri-County, and we had 14 freshmen going. So this year, we have 12 kids graduating. So I could see that ticking up a little bit next year, by 2 or 3 kids, if we have, 15 or 16 freshmen there next year. But then the following year, when we're only graduating 4 kids, in FY, school year 26, 27, if we have 14 kids in that freshman class, we'd see a bigger jump in the population
So
of
so my
Tri-County.
question was, the new school, which is going to be pretty nice.
New
Right.
Millis School, not New Tri-County School.
New Tri-County.
New Tri-County.
The new Tri-County school, it's going to be really nice. I mean, it's going to have everything. $290 million worth.
Yeah.
That's going to be a real attraction, do you think?
I
Are you
think,
anticipating
I
that,
think
or-
so, but I always say, Tri-County is the exact right school for some kids that want to learn a trade, and an affinity and a talent in something, Tri-County, absolutely the right school for some kids. I think there are some Millis kids that are at Tri-County who would be better served in the Millis public schools, irrespective of, a shiny new building. But that's me talking, and I don't know how persuasive that is to some kid who goes on a tour and sees state-of-the-art shops.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Is there a limit as to how many students can go to Tri-County from Millis? I mean, is there,
I couldn't give you a number, but they do have, I don't know if it's a limit or a guideline on how many they can take from each district.
Well,
Mr. Chair.
so many seats available is, I guess, my
Like, there's like
question.
1,000 spots, aren't there, total?
Yes, yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
Maybe I can ask that question
Yep,
another way, because
please
I
do.
do have one. Do you know, so the Tri-County demographics or population, that's a 33% increase from last year. That's a big jump. And I'm curious if all of the Millis's applicants were accepted, or were they cut for merit, or were they cut at a cap? In other words, did Millis hit some cap, our portion of 1,000? Or were there applications were there more students that applied than this?
More students applied than this. Not all students were accepted. I really can't speak to why they weren't accepted, if they weren't accepted because we filled up our Millis quota, or if this student's application is not as solid as this one, so we're accepting this one and not accepting that one.
I would like that question asked of Ms. Harden, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe she can tell us.
Mr. Chair, I was
Yep.
just curious, has the school restarted having the eighth graders go and tour the school?
So years ago, we did like a field trip.
Right.
Get buses, send them over. We don't do that anymore. But they do have open houses at Tri-County, and we let our kids know that there's open houses, and, their folks can take them over, and,
So
a
there's
number of them
nothing that during the day they
There's
can
not-
go over?
no,
That you
no.
bring them over
We
like
do
in the
not
olden
bring them
days?
over.
Bring them
No.
over
No.
to, is there a
No.
reason for that, or
Well, for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
There's two big ones.
you don't want them to go?
Well, that's, okay, that's
Okay.
number two.
Yeah.
And number one is, we think they're better off being in school, learning, than going on a field trip to Tri-County.
It's also going to cost us a lot more money for students.
So, yeah, looking at kind of the numbers, so I believe the Tri-County building will be finished in 27, 28-ish, looking at their timeline. So I would imagine there'd be you might see a tick up in enrollment, but maybe a bigger tick up once that's completed. Potentially.
Yeah,
I know we
definitely
can't predict,
potentially, yeah.
Especially now that the school has AP classes and everything.
Correct,
Much
yeah.
to the chagrin of superintendents, who it's supposed to strictly be a vocational
Yeah.
school, but now there's SPED and there's, right?
And
you
again,
yeah.
I think for some kids,
Mm,
absolutely the right
Yeah.
thing. But for most Millis students, Millis High School is the best
Yeah.
alternative for them.
And we have a big question mark with the new building here in Millis too, so.
Yes.
To be determined.
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
So just doing some quick, bar napkin math, we have 104 students, Millis residents, who choose not to go to school in Millis, which is just under 10% of our current enrollment in the school.
Yeah.
0.924, if, you really want to crunch it. What percentage, just in your experience, do you believe is because Millis schools are being seen as undesirable because of class size and staffing levels?
I don't know if I can answer that, but I will say, in the past, we've contacted parents whose students went to Tri-County, and, just for information, what was the main reason? The number one reason was for the vocational program. The second reason was because, Millis is a small district, and it was, my son, my daughter wanted to meet new kids, wanted to meet, and that was the second
That's fair.
biggest answer. And the displeasure with the school buildings and the education, that was very rare we got a response about that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone? Okay, thank you on that.
Yeah.
You get a piece of candy for that one.
Oh, thank you. And just Norfolk Agricultural School,
Yeah.
Our numbers, we're usually, 8 to 10.
Consistent.
8 to 10 kids there. We are only graduating one this year. I think we might have like 3 or 4 kids applying. So if they all get accepted and go to the Aggie, we'd see those numbers tick up. But it's not going to be a huge jump like we see in like Tri-County.
And just to, not to go back to Tri-County, you passed along the Tri-County assessment calculation. I don't think it was printed out tonight. I think it was too late, but it's online, and Deirdre passed it out. So right now, between, for 2025, capital assessment and debt assessment, it's approximately $30,000 per Tri-County student, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
So what would that total be, Mr. Chair?
times
So
whatever,
30
well,
30,000 times.
1.2 million.
yeah.
Yeah, it's double what it was because of the building assessment.
Because of the debt.
So how's the
Yeah.
town going to pay for that?
Well, so it's interesting. So if you look at the 9 and 10, 14 and 13, those are going to keep going through the pipeline, and then you're going to have those backfilled by that big class that's coming through, and then you have a new Tri-County building that's available. And there may be whatever Tri-County caps per town, whatever, because there's only so many spots. But that, we could go back up into the 40s, 50s, or 60s, and that comes out of operating budget.
Yeah, I think it,
I'm not trying to speculate or.
It was free
be a
cash
doomsday,
last
but-
year, wasn't it?
It's because we didn't vote for the debt exclusion. If we had voted for the debt exclusion, then the capital expenses would have been paid outside of the budget. But that may come up again. I don't know. Mike Kaczynski could talk about that at another time, but that, yes, it's impacting our regular budget, and it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Based on current enrollment, it's 1.29 million, and that's
Yeah.
before the new school
Yeah.
assessment hits.
So that's what,
Agreed.
just through the chair, Mr. Underhill.
Yes, go ahead.
Maybe you know, for FY '26, that's going to be the amount, the IOU amount?
Well, it's
Well, that's
roughly
based
that
off
now.
of
It's
the
going to be
numbers.
30%. It's a 30% increase over that.
Correct. Yeah, that's based off of these numbers, not future numbers, which are gonna go up, as we've heard.
Yep,
So where's it coming from?
We should ask the select board.
yeah. Tough slide.
I think as a finance committee, with all due respect to everybody, we should know this, where it's coming from, a little ahead of.
Oh, we knew it. I mean, we knew it
Yeah.
Well,
because
no,
the-
it-
the-
it's-
We're coming out of the
it's free
operating budget.
cash
We
it
know what the
comes from.
choices are.
They
Yeah.
told us,
Yeah.
yeah, we recommended the override piece of it, and the voters didn't pick it.
Now everyone's gonna complain.
Continue, thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr.
A lot of info.
And then just private schools, as I said, slightly ticked down this year from 78 to 74. And the largest, the schools that attract the most Millis kids are Severia of 22 Millis kids at Severian, which has a lower school now. It used to just be 9 to 12, but Severia now has 7 through 12. And then Sparhawk, we have 12 Millis kids going to Sparhawk, and we have 10 kids at Bishop Fien. Homeschool, we're at 11, and we have 1 charter student.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Sarah,
I did
sorry.
hear that Sparhawk was adding 10, 11, and 12 maybe next year. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if they're phasing it in, because they were 3 to 8 to start, but now they're
Yeah.
3 to 9. So I don't know if they're phasing it in.
They're putting feelers out.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, I don't. yeah.
How many people go to Sparhawk? I don't even
It's
know.
not a huge school.
12.
It says 12, it's not.
No, total.
total.
Yeah,
Total.
yeah, I don't know what their
I
enrollment
think
is.
it's a couple hundred.
I would think
Best.
so.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've just seen that progress over the years, driving down
Yeah.
115.
Okay, and then our per pupil expenditures, and, you know, you folks might have seen this. The latest data we have available from the state is FY '23, so that's what's represented here. And this graph shows Millis and its neighbors, and we're at, for FY '23, we're at $19,679 to in per pupil expenditures. We were below the state average, and when you take all our neighbors and get an average for them, we're slightly below our neighbors' average.
If I may interrupt for 1 second.
Yep, go ahead.
Anyone object if I closed a couple windows?
Yeah, please do. Ruby, you on that? Thank you.
So it costs us close to $20,000 per pupil.
Joyce, talk into it.
Yeah.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, no, you gotta.
Thank you. So it costs us 20,000, close to.
Around
Per
20.
pupil here,
For in-district.
in district.
Yeah.
Whereas it's 30,000 at Tri-County.
When you factor in the debt payment and the tuition, yeah,
Yep.
it's significantly more per student for us. And
Mr.
then,
Chair?
Go ahead,
Are
Kathy.
you on the same slide? I see that you have it, it's under 20,000, yet
for in-district, yeah.
Right, but per choice, we receive 5,000. So why would we have school choice? And why is it so attractive?
Because school choice means if this is the classroom and this seat is empty, it's not making us any money. So if we get a choice kid, we get a seat in here, it doesn't impact the size of, like, we don't have to hire a new teacher or anything like that. We get a student, we get $5,000 for that student. That's $5,000 you wouldn't have, it's like.
It's a
when-
bonus.
Yeah.
It's like when there's an empty seat on a plane that just as soon sell it. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. And that brings our
So
amount
no
down.
No regard to, speaking of increase in class sizes that are a detriment to the
Well,
school.
those-
Then your school, if you didn't have the school choice, you wouldn't be worried that you'd have to get rid of teachers or anything.
Well, those class sizes, like particularly in the lower grades, they're not choice kids, they're Millis kids. The largest number of choice kids are the kids that are in the high schools. That's why we're graduating like 12 and only taking one in. That's why it's declining. But the whole benefit of choice is this seat would be empty. We can get a kid in there, and we're not increasing our number of teachers or things like that. It's a bonus.
I just wonder why all towns don't have this then, don't offer it.
Most towns do. Most towns do. But some of our neighbors do not.
Do not.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, that doesn't mean your kids can't choice out.
Right.
So
We
like,
do
if we
that.
didn't have choice, we'd be responsible for tuition for 18 kids, and we'd be getting nothing back. Right now, we're getting roughly $5,000 for 52 kids.
And that's the same thing, it might not have anything to do with it, but a lot of our children went through Spanish immersion, but I'm just hearing residents that don't understand it. If you would cut the Spanish immersion, and one of the questions was, if you have 30 students in Spanish immersion in the first grade, do they drop out as the years, and then what happens to that class?
Yeah, there is some attrition.
Exactly, right.
And I would say, to your point, our fifth grade, where we have large class sizes, our immersion class is smaller than the other three classes. Having said that, the size isn't that different. It's not like there's 12 kids in the immersion class. It's in the 20s. The other classes are higher in the 20s.
So to answer all the people that are saying, get rid of Spanish immersion, after review by the school committee, you still feel that it's an asset, both financially and educationally, to the students of Millis?
As superintendent, I would say yes.
Okay.
It's a,
As a
it's
parent, I
cost
could say, yes,
neutral.
all three of mine were Spanish immersion.
Right, mine
Same,
too.
Yeah.
same
Yeah,
here.
They're
it's
phenomenal.
Yep.
it's really cost neutral. We have to have
Yeah.
4 fifth-grade teachers. One of them teaches Spanish immersion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope everybody heard that. Like you said, Mr. Hundiel, you're talking to the people out there as well.
Everyone in the
Right,
room
right.
understands.
And it's a hallmark of our district.
It is.
It was just like if you start with 30 kids in the first grade and you're ending up in the sixth grade with, and they still have to have the Spanish, and you're
Right.
ending up with
Yeah,
20 or 15. That
right,
I
right.
think
And-
that's what they're saying.
Anecdotally, my daughter's in the second grade immersion, and there was one student who dropped out, and someone was actually able to opt in.
Right,
to the
yeah,
program.
there's a wait
So,
list.
yeah.
For, and if a student on a wait list can pass an assessment to get in, they.
Without an IEP, of course.
Well,
to help them. I mean, to get them to learn faster Spanish.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
I just wanted to kind of add on to something that maybe Joyce asked about, or the comparison on per pupil expenditures between Millis and, say, Tri-County. You know, it's not necessarily apples to oranges, because, again, that capital expense is included in that tuition. If you added in the Clyde Brown capital expenditure, or that bond that we're paying, potentially increase to the high school, middle school, if you added those in, it's more than 19,000.
Great point.
I don't know what it is.
Yep.
But
I follow
but
your
in order to
logic.
compare it, you'd have to get those costs and, you know, separate it out by per pupil.
Yep, great point. Yep.
And then out of district, out of district, in FY '23, our average was $20,663. Again, below the state average, slightly below the state average, and slightly below the average of our neighboring districts. And then the state has a model of comparison districts. And they're known as our DOT district. So these are districts that are similar to Millis in grade span, populations, enrollment, et
Can
cetera.
you just define DART annually for
Yeah,
us?
DOT is a district analysis research tool. So it's, you know.
Yeah.
And I have some questions about our DOT schools this year, because Wakefield is a DOT district to ours, and Wakefield is like 3 times the size of Millis. So I don't know how they wound up as a DOT district, but the other ones are kind of in line with us. So, so these are schools that are most similar to us, according to, you know, the state analysis. And so again, we're kind of in the middle of the DOT schools and slightly below the DOT average for in-school, in-district per pupil expenditures. And then when we look at out-of-district as well as in-district, again, we're just over 20,663 for Millis, and that's slightly below the DOT average of 20,881.
Go ahead, Pete.
Do you happen to know the state, forgive me for not knowing the exact term, but the either Chapter 70 money, or how much money each of these DART schools get compared to Millis?
Funding, that's a good, I do not know that. That's a good.
It'd be worthwhile to know,
question.
given that we're writing letters to our representatives.
Chances are, they're in the same boat as us. There's 232 districts now that I believe that are minimum aid districts like Millis. Some of these probably not, but most of them probably are.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I also wonder if these other schools include like teachers' health insurance and all those benefits. I know we take that, Mr. Conroy explained so well last year, we take those expenses from the big pot of money before it's distributed. Just want to know if the other schools are doing it like that, because if they are and we're not, then we would be much
Then the
higher.
Numbers are skewed. Yeah, I don't know.
Another thing that would be interesting to know, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, thank you.
I'll write it down here.
It's not.
It's not,
Benefits aren't used as part of the per pupil expenditure.
across the board.
This calculation is a state calculation, so the expenses as they're reported by all the districts would be the same.
Yeah.
So
That's why they're a DART.
how internally the
Yes.
towns may allocate that would not be.
It's not there.
Right.
Thank you, Mark.
And then just some spending and funding trends that we're seeing, and, you know, we've been talking about quite a bit these last few years. In the last 10 years, you know, obviously you see steady increases in our spending for our schools in Millis. Over that period, the average per year is 3.9% increase in spending. So, you know, in my estimation, reasonable. What happens next is what's been killing us. the amount that Millis has to fund for its schools is increasing. The amount of aid we're receiving from the state is decreasing. So, you know, it's been a 20% decline since FY '17. We're at, you know, the state provided 27.91% of our budget in FY '17. It covered 22.31% in FY '24. So that's 5.6% percentage points less. When you consider in a $20 million budget, a percentage point is worth $200,000. You know, it's almost $1.2 million that the town's responsible for, that if we were funded at FY '17 levels, the state would have been responsible for.
And Mr. Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
I'd like to add, that number sounds very familiar to everyone here, the 1.2 million shortfall.
Absolutely.
And this is just, you know, kind of spells it out in graphic form. Since 2017, our budget has increased, for the schools, has increased at about 4% yearly. The state's increase in funding to Millis schools has increased by less than 1% a year. And so the town's contribution has grown by 5.3% each year. The town is contributing more and more, the state is contributing less and less. Whoops, sorry. And then in Millis, we rely a lot on our revolving accounts and grant funding to help support our budget, to offset some of our costs. And you can see in the amount of our per pupil expenditure in FY '23 that came from our operating fund was $17,075. About $2,000 per pupil was coming out of grants and revolving funds and so on and so forth. And you can see that among our neighboring districts, Millis was the fourth highest when it came to percentage of budget offset, paid by offsets. You know, so we've always been able to use things like choice to help offset our operating budget. But as we saw earlier, the choice numbers are dwindling, and so is the money we're receiving from the state for those choice students. In FY '21 and FY '22, we were receiving over $500,000 in choice money from the state. In FY '26, the projection is we're going to be receiving $244,000. So it's a significant decrease. So for our FY '25 budget, we were able to offset $419,000 in salaries from choice. So we paid for $419,000 worth of salaries in choice. This year, our offset is only $191,000. So it's significant, and they're not positions we can say, well, we don't have choice, we can't afford to have those teachers. We still have to have the teachers, so we have to fold that into the operating budget. And this is kind of our biggest issue with the FY '26 budget. The grants and revolving funds that we have used to offset our operating budget have been depleted or no longer exist. So, and the big one is choice, as I just mentioned. Then we had the SOA grant, which was a grant that paid for the salary of a special education teacher and part of an EL teacher. That grant expires this year. And so we can't, you saw the numbers, we can't say, well, we're not going to use an EL teacher or special education teachers. Our numbers are increasing in those areas. We're mandated to have those services. So again, $149,000 worth of salary going from a grant into our operating budget. Transportation, some salaries that we paid for out of transportation, we can't use, we don't have as much money in the transportation funds, so we've had to cut the number of salaries coming out of transportation. And then the host community impact funds, the marijuana funds, we've seen those decline year over year. And again, these are positions that we can't say, well, we don't need that. We need these positions, and so we've moved them from an offset into our operating budget. That's $480,000 worth of salaries that last year we were able to cover in grants and revolving. This year we've had to put in our operating budget. And obviously, that's going to have an impact on our final number.
No. Kathy, do you have a question regarding grants?
I do. Thank you. I went to this seminar last year, and up until the last minute, the governor can revoke grants even if they're given. And I want to know, are you current on receiving what's due?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Just kind of along those lines too. So the grants that you can obtain are solely state grants, but I'm wondering how much of that comes from federal grants, and then with the whole dismantling of the Department of Education, I'm just wondering going forward if you would even be able to, I guess, kind of project if you would get any new grants or additional grants coming down the pipeline for maybe 26, 27, and how that, you guys are thinking how that may affect you going forward.
Yeah, we're not assuming any new grants or anything like that. We are assuming about what we've received in entitlement grants over the last, however many years. We're assuming that, and it's an assumption we're making. But, to do otherwise would be, even more devastating.
catastrophic,
Yeah,
right?
right now, things seem to change day by day, so we're kind of just watching it all unfold. But an assumption in our budget is we're going to receive about the same as we've received for the last several years in our federal grants.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Could I ask the superintendent to remind me what HCA marijuana funds are given to the school?
Sure, so last year, the $81,000 was paid for the salary of an adjustment counselor in our middle school SEL program, Social Emotional Learning Program. And this year, instead of paying the salary of a teacher, it's going to pay the salary of a paraprofessional in the SEL program, Social Emotional Learning Program.
What's SEL mean?
Social Emotional Learning. Yeah. They didn't have
Lot
it
of
when we
acronyms.
were in school. But again, essential.
And so you'd have to make those cuts.
Oh, speaking in the mic.
Sorry. So you'd have to keep these positions because they're required, and you'd have to make the cuts again in a different part, like English, math, something,
Right, right, because, these are mandated.
right? Okay.
And I know you're focusing on the fiscal year ahead of you, but with the HCA funds running out, those will be depleted and
Right.
absorbed or not into the
Yes.
operating budget.
Yes. Yeah. So, and again, the bottom line, $480,000 worth of salaries shifting from offsets to our operating budget. And then just, to speak to some of those grants, this is just what we're receiving this year, and this is, about what we're assuming in our FY '26 budget. The IDEA Act, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, we received $370,000. That some grants you can use to fund salaries, others you cannot. Some you can use some of it for salary. There's different parameters with each grant. So just, for your information, this year we funded 9 paraprofessionals from the IDEA grant. The early childhood grant paid for a part of the salary of a paraprofessional in the pre-K program. Special ed programming, you can't use that for salary. The Title I grant, we use that for part of a teacher and part of a para salary. Same thing with the Title II grant, part of a teacher. Title IV, you can't use on salary. So again, we received about $460,000 in federal grants for this past year, and pretty much in line with where it's been.
Yeah, go ahead, Joyce.
Thank you. I understand these are the federal grants. Can schools write for, are there grants that, I know that different departments write for have grant
Yes,
writers.
yeah.
Can the schools do that?
Yes, when there are grants available, that if we meet the criteria,
And who
we
does
apply
that?
for them. Generally, it's Maureen Knowlton, who's our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and she's excellent at it, and over the years, she's, been able to obtain many grants. A lot of those grants are drying up. We had a math professional development grant this year that a teacher and a paraprofessional at Clyde Brown were getting professional development training in a new math curriculum. And about 3 weeks ago, we received a letter saying that grant has been paused.
Do,
Federal,
All these
yeah.
are federal.
do large corporations, do they ever offer grant money?
Yes.
And she will then in turn?
Yeah, and another issue we have in Millis is, a lot of times it's a competitive grant, and so you have to have a certain population of low income or things like this.
gotta
And
qualify.
we've seen the numbers in Millis change, in the last 10 years, but there are some grants we're still not eligible for because of our population. Right, correct, yeah. But the number of grants that are available now are not the same as what they were 5 years ago.
Thank you.
Okay, and then, so finally, getting to the FY '26 budget. What our request is really not even level service, because there are things that expenses we're cutting and so forth, but a level staffed budget. We're requesting $21,228,854. $17.2 million is salaries. $1.55 million is out-of-district tuitions, and $2.426 million other expenses. And we can kind of look at how that's broken down. Compared to FY '25, we operate under the assumption of the target being a 4% budget. A 4% budget from our FY '25 base would be almost $20.9 million. When we combine our salaries with our out-of-district tuitions, and again, just as a reminder, that $1.55 million in out-of-district tuitions, that number is actually higher, but we receive reimbursement from Circuit Breaker, and we have $719,000 that we're offsetting that total by. So the operating budget, it's $1.55 million for the out-of-district tuitions.
So just a pause there, the circuit breaker is bringing that number down, not the OOD enrollment.
Correct, yeah. And,
May I?
Yeah, please.
Or a combination of both, right?
Good
right,
point.
Right,
Yep,
yes,
yep.
yeah. And our
Do you know which?
difference, yeah, we're spending, well, the number itself is brought down by the circuit breaker, but the total of tuitions is less this year than last year. So they've toned down by students. We're actually, our tuitions are $300,000 lower than they were last year, which is great news. However, that's offset by other expenses rising to $2.4 million, and these other expenses include a lot of contracted services that we've had to pay for this year because we didn't have staffing to cover mandated expenses. So for example, we have students who have registered behavior technicians on their IEP. That's a specialized paraprofessional who takes data on behavior and works with the board-certified behavior analyst, the BCBA, when kids have needs with behavior. It's a specialized paraprofessional, and we've had several of those positions that we haven't been able to fill, several RBT positions that we haven't been able to fill. And so those services are mandated, we have to provide them, so we have to contract out. And that's at a much greater cost than if we had an RBT on our payroll. So that's really hit us hard this year and looks to hit us hard next year. And then that brings us to our total ask of $21,228,854, which is $330,000 above our 4% target. And just a few notes there, as we talked about, $480,000 in salaries moved from grants revolving to operational. Had we been able to keep those monies coming from grants and revolving, the salaries would have been a 3.3 increase, and the total budget ask would have been a 3.25% increase. But unfortunately, we had to roll those $480,000 into our operating budget, and that's why our ask is at 5.64%.
Okay.
And then, just expenses, if we just count out-of-district tuitions as expenditures, we see, we combine them, it's a 3% increase in expenditures. Excuse me. And the drivers of our expenditures, as we talked about, out-of-district tuitions, a big ticket item, the contracted services, I mentioned the RBTs. We don't have enough van drivers, so we've had to contract out some van routes for students with special needs who are out-of-district placements. And again, contracting out costs us more than if, the van driver were an employee of the Millis Public Schools. And then translation services for EL students and things like that, we have to contract out for those services. So again, contracted and consulting services are a big ticket item. Energy, utilities, of course, the bus lease, and the capital technology. Those are our big expenses. They account for 75% of our expenditures.
I believe Jody has a question, and I can answer. I'm going to ask her, you want to ask Jody?
I can ask, what is capital technology?
Capital technology is things like the Chromebooks for our students, the laptops for the teachers, all our printers and all that, those items.
Do you have to
So
replace
it's
those frequently?
They're on a replacement cycle.
Okay. Versus a maintenance, the capitals, the Chromebooks, et cetera, versus
Right.
upgrading software in it or maintaining Wi-Fi or whatever. Good. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a circuit breaker question, so, thank you. The out-of-district tuition went down $300,000. That's going to impact our circuit breaker reimbursement fund for next fiscal year, correct?
Yeah, we
That'll
would be
enter into the calculation.
yeah,
We'll
because
get
it's a
less
year in arrears.
next
We'll
year.
get less.
Okay,
Yeah,
just,
right.
it's great it went down, but.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. We still like to see it go down because
Sure.
we only get 75% off of the.
Just
But,
looking
yeah,
ahead,
but
yeah.
it's money that, correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, go ahead.
I understood that you privatized the van driving. Does the school have extra vans now that aren't being used?
We've just purchased some vans, so hopefully we can get some drivers in those vans, and that would take care of some of those contracted services costs. That's our goal.
And then if doesn't happen, then the vans just sit? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So, and we're optimistic that we can find drivers. We have, we're advertising
Is there an
all the
online
time.
application?
Yes, yeah.
You got a billboard up
School
on the
Spring,
109 there,
Indeed,
don't
yeah,
you?
we had a
Yes,
bill- yeah.
Yeah.
We're sending out in news, anyone out there that wants to drive a
This poor
van?
fellow.
Joyce does.
What are the requirements for a driver?
To drive a van, you need a 7D license, which, Mr. Wigan, you want to field that one?
Hey,
You,
advertise.
you need a clean driving record.
Oh,
We will
okay,
train
got
you.
it.
We have 2 excellent trainers on staff.
Define clean.
We will train you for a 7D license. We'll also train for a CDL bus driver license.
Wow.
What's
Okay,
clean? What do you
and-
mean by clean?
You can't do it.
You can't. No accidents.
The drug test, too.
No accidents.
No accidents?
No
arrests.
accidents.
Ever?
No accidents. And to drive the van, it's a 7D license. That's a much easier of the 2 licenses to get. As far as the new vans are the ones, if you remember, we had a fleet where almost every van was over 100,000 miles. So the new vans are the ones that we put into the wild, if you will, and drive those first. And we're trying to move out those vans that were older. And that will, again, if we get a van this spring, same idea.
Do you want to put a plug in for capital planning and your schedule for that? It might answer Kathy's question and everybody's thoughts.
Yes, we capital planning, the town was very kind last fall with capital planning, proposed 2 vans, and we got them. This year with capital planning, I believe they're proposing another van to kind of keep us on track with replacing those 100,000-plus vans with a new fleet. And the new fleet of vans are hybrid vans. So they are not straight gas vans, they are gas-electric vans. We have 2 chargers that were put in place with the Clyde Brown School, and obviously, as we get more hybrid vans, we're looking to add chargers so that we can have a fleet that is more environmentally sound.
And roughly speaking, how many vans does the school have?
We have approximately 19, might be as much as 20. We have a lot of routes.
And every year, all these vans are on the capital planning.
And that's why we need
scheduled to
drivers,
be
because we have a
replaced.
lot of vans, we have a lot
So
of.
how
routes
many
that we-
drivers are you looking for?
Right,
19.
I believe we hired 1 today, but we are still looking for 4 more drivers.
Wow.
So we have openings.
And how many hours a week?
Generally, it's about 20 to 25 hours a week, depending on the route.
So it includes insurance then.
It does include insurance.
And what's the hourly rate?
Excuse me again?
The hourly rate?
The hourly rate varies depending, some people come to us with experience. So based on the collective bargaining agreement, they may be placed on a higher step. Others who start off with us new, they would probably start at step 1. I honestly don't know the rates off the top of my head.
$50 an hour?
Little
20
less-
bucks an hour?
Little less than 50.
Give us a range.
Closer to 20.
You're going to get a flood of
Closer to the
applications
20.
now.
All right.
Closer to the 20.
50, I'm applying.
But I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit more than 20.
You're going to have to turn people away.
I got my class B.
Just
ahead.
as you might want to talk to the Council on Aging, to see, because they have drivers that do driving, but there are people who have looked to be drivers.
Good idea.
So you might want to see if there are still any people who are still looking to be drivers.
Good idea, we'll do that tomorrow.
Great.
So we've got about 6 slides left, so, thank you, Terry.
And then just the variables, we mentioned this before, the final allocations, the choice receipts, there's usually some fluctuation, but it's usually not earth-shattering. FY '26 grants like we talked about, kind of up in the air. Fuel cost, utilities, I should also include the negotiation, the Unit A negotiations, another variable. And then the budget allocations, and I think this gets to a question that was asked earlier. First of all, 81.25% of our budget is salaries. That's the big ticket item. Special education costs, not including salaries, I think, Mr. Law, you might have asked about that earlier. It's 9.94% of our budget. District-wide expenditures, technology, transportation are the next largest expense items. And then when we pull salaries out of it as far as expenses go, special education, which, and this includes out-of-district tuitions, accounts for about 53% of our expenses. And then again, district-wide technology, transportation are the other larger areas there.
Just to circle back, those IEP costs would be under special ed or not?
Right, the ones that.
Not all
that-
necessarily, but maybe.
Right, yeah, and the salaries aren't included in that, so the salaries of all the special ed teachers are included in the overall salary
Yeah,
slice of the
yeah.
pie.
Okay.
Thank you for the pie chart.
Oh, you're welcome.
I think we should go back to pie charts because it shows the common person where it
It gives you
goes,
perspective, like,
rather
yeah,
than just reading it.
yeah. And then, again, the difference between what we're asking for and our target of 4% is $330,030. And, you know, if we translated this amount into cuts, we'd be looking at cutting 4 to 9 FTEs and staff, coming on the heels of 15.8 last year, 6.4 the prior year. Honestly, it would be devastating. Like, I can't imagine having to do this, which is why, you know, I'm in begging mode with this budget request.
Go ahead, Pete.
Mr. Chair, at what point would the schools be at risk of losing their state accreditation with these cuts that we've done over the past 3 years?
Well, our next accreditation from like NEAS, New England Association of Schools and Colleges, isn't for another 5 years. However, every year we have to file a report with them, and so we could be put on probation or something like that if the accrediting board determines that we're not providing what we need to provide. And the state would come into, you know, if we're ever in violation of IEPs and things like that, we'd get called on the carpet quickly.
Thank you.
So I'll ask the two unfriendly questions. If there were cuts, do you know what areas would be cut?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Not at this point.
And if there were cuts, would it be a combination of staff and teachers, or all teachers?
It would probably be, I'm thinking it would probably be a combination of staff, which is kind of why we have the range there.
Okay.
You know, if we say average teacher's salary is, you know, $98,000, you know, just
You get to 3 or
looking at
4.
it that way, you
Yeah.
get those numbers. And, you know, and it you know, I'm loath to even talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, reducing someone from a 1.0 to a 0.8 or something like that. But again, on the heels of the last 2 years, it would be devastating. You know, it's been devastating already, you know, to be honest.
Jody, you have a question, because your hand's up.
I do. On the pie chart, you have district-wide expenses, you know, and that's 8.5% of, you know, the non-salary expenses. What goes into that bucket?
So those expenses can include everything from, you know, supplies for the district offices and the district programs, the directors of student affairs, the director of student support services, business, finance, superintendent's office, all those expenses relative to our transition program. So, you know, there's a wide range of things that go into that.
Mr. Chair?
Hang on, does that answer your question, Jody?
Yes,
Oh.
although I mean, it's, considering it's 8.5% of the non-salary expenses, I think it would be helpful to understand, you know, kind of see that breakdown a little bit more granular. Yeah, because oftentimes I hear the complaint that, you know, there's too many chiefs, not enough Indians, and people will point to that section of the pie and say, see right there. So if we have that in more detail, then it's helpful to kind of explain, these are all the things that make up kind of that section of the budget.
Yeah, we can provide that information, and it is, you know, those are not salaries in there. in that slice of the pie. Those are expenses, not salaries. But we can get that
Get a
breakdown.
list of those, that'd be
Yeah, we
great.
can get that breakdown for you.
Good. Terry, go ahead. Thanks, Jody.
A couple of things that just pop out as big items that are in central district-wide. For example, the bus lease is going to be in there. We pay a sum of money, approximately half the cost of Munis. So that's going to show up in there. There's things like that that are involved in those central district-wide expenses. So there are some relatively big-ticket items that go into that figure.
But big expenses for functionality of the school. Yep.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Chair.
Go ahead, Kathy.
We can get those.
There was discussion that the Millis DPW would take over the fields, including the school fields. How would that affect your budget with your personnel, or maybe you haven't heard this yet, or?
I've heard about, but I haven't had any,
Okay.
formal meetings. I know there would be some challenges with that, different bargaining units and things like that. So I really don't think I can answer that, Ms. McGinnis.
And also, the same, you and I had a discussion with the HR that the town's proposing to be for the schools and the town, and just how would that affect your personnel would be something, if it's on I believe it's for town meeting this spring, about an HR department to sort of expand it, so.
Right.
I'd just be interested to hear how something like that would affect your budget.
Go, Mr. Mike Kaczynski, go ahead.
Thank you. So just to touch upon that a little bit, I think we've had some discussions about that, about how the HR positions would work. I think we're looking at having the entire HR department possibly not being within the school budget. There would be a full-time person at the school from the human resource department, but they would be within the human resources department.
Of
So
the town.
I can certainly plan on talking about that in more detail next Wednesday. I think we're on your agenda next Wednesday to talk about those other budgets, so we'll get into that in detail then. But I think the short answer here is it doesn't have any direct impact on the budgets that the superintendent presented tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead, Pete.
Would you care to characterize how your presentation to the select board went? And again, I'm not asking you to put words in their mouth, but, were they receptive? Was there any discussion? And I can look it up on the video, but I'm just looking for a quick,
On the budget,
on the budget.
we haven't
You haven't
presented to
presented,
the
okay.
select board.
All right,
No,
good luck.
We just had the,
We were first in line.
we had the hearing at the school committee meeting last week.
Right.
And then, you're our second stop.
We're special.
When is it? When is it? Next week? Is it Monday? or-
I don't know.
I'm just
Go ahead, Mike.
Chairman?
Yeah.
It's not usual that the school budget comes formally before the board at a particular time. I think there'll probably be a meeting, in early April to look at the entire budget, including the school budget, and that's probably when, this will be discussed. I think the school's budget is, in this level of detail, is usually given primarily to the finance committee.
Gotcha. So, town administrator, so when that occurs, when those conversations occur, select board will discuss the 330,000 shortfall and how to fund it, or where to fund it, is that correct?
Yes, that'll be part of the broader budget discussion, when the board has that. The board's next meeting isn't until, March 31st, so that's the earliest that can happen at this point.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Far be it from me to tell the select board how to do their business. I find it odd that they don't have a standalone meeting to discuss a $21 million budget.
Before us, before it comes.
At
before the
any time.
FinCom.
I-
Well,
Before it
well,
comes to the
and on what, February 3rd or whatever, or, yeah, February 3rd, all
I think-
all departments, though, did
I-
present to the
I
select
think the
board.
select board has been ongoing with discussions. I don't think any of this is a surprise to them.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just for a
Pl-
little clarification.
please do.
The school department does not report to the select board, and they do not go through the select board on the budget process. They do have discussions with them, but all the other departments that come before the select board are actually departments, for the most part, are under the jurisdiction of the select board. So, and the school's budget has a little bit of a different timeline. So
That's right.
the other half.
Yep.
Thank you. Makes no difference to my opinion. They should present.
So the finance committee is setting the budget?
No?
We either recommend or not recommend. We don't set it.
No.
We don't
But
establish
they-
it.
but the
That's for
town-
the school board
The
to do.
select
and-
board, Mr. Chair, approved the warrant on Monday, but not this.
The select board does
The-
not decide what budget goes before a town meeting.
Town
for the
meeting.
school. They determine.
Oh, they ask, okay.
What they're going to recommend. If the school
Yeah.
department has a budget that is beyond what they're willing to support, that'll be part of their recommendation on the town meeting floor.
Yeah.
But Mr. Mulaney and I have had a number of meetings. We meet on a regular basis. We're gonna be meeting again next week. And so the communication's ongoing. It's just been more so through the administration than directly from board to board. But I do expect that the select board will be discussing this at their next meeting. I will talk with the chair to see if they want representatives of the school committee to come into that meeting.
But that'll be, Mike, that'll be under Article 3 for the fiscal year 26 operating budget, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Any final questions?
So again, just the next steps, we continue looking at those variables, continue, making adjustments. May 5th, we have town meeting, and then in June, the school committee would approve the recast budget at the amount that was approved at town meeting.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just saying, I'm glad to see the superintendent here this year, really presenting the budget. And you've done a very thorough job in presenting everything that I think we could ask. We'll look at it, obviously, but I don't think there's any questions I have. I think you've answered all of them.
I'll add something. I agree. We've been at this for an hour and 45 minutes or so, and appreciate you going in-depth in each part, because that helps us understand and helps us articulate the story to the voters that are out there, as well as if they watch the videos online. Going forward, and I'm not trying to pontificate here, but if the state gets less and less, and more comes down, is it just a death spiral going forward? Or does the school need to restructure? And I'm not trying to open this up for another hour discussion, but I just what are the future thoughts?
Yeah, well,
Because I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's not just Millis, right? It's every town in Massachusetts that's going through this, or not
Just
every
about.
town, but just about every town. But I'd love to hear kind of what your
Well,
thoughts are.
so in the very near future, next Monday, the joint Ways and Mean Committee of the General Court is holding a hearing at UMass Amherst at 11 o'clock to discuss municipal funding and school funding and Chapter 70. And, the formulas that are used to calculate what a town can pay and what a school's budget target should be, they're antiquated. They don't work for a majority of the communities. And there seems to be, we seem to be at the tipping point where, I think Millis is going to send representatives to this meeting out at UMass Amherst. I'm planning on attending as well. We filed testimony. We've sent things to our state legislators. Other towns are doing the same thing.
Yep.
So I'm hoping this meeting Monday draws a huge crowd of people from all over the Commonwealth, because the formulas we use for education in the Commonwealth certainly do not help Millis, and they certainly don't help the majority of school districts in the Commonwealth and the majority of students, because there's 232 school districts that receive minimum aid out of 351 towns. So 2/3 are receiving minimum aid, and those 2/3 of the school districts account for more than 50% of the students in the Commonwealth. So, you know, the way things are funded now are not appropriate, and it's hurting kids.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say
Go ahead.
something that, and it's basically shame on our state for not taking care of the students, the children that are our future. Basically, that's what it comes down to. We're not taking care of, they're not being taken care of, and they're the people, I mean, other countries I know, their education is so important. And it seems to me that and it may be the United States, but I know here in Millis and Massachusetts, it's not serious. It's not taken seriously at all.
Massachusetts
very sad.
is a leader in education, but, you know, these formulas are antiquated.
Yeah.
You know, when they were first implemented, you know, they served the purpose, but
They should be
they don't do- they
revisited
don't
every
do it
5
anymore.
years.
They don't do it anymore, and, you know, we all know the constraints of Proposition 2.5 and all that impact. So, you know, it is very challenging. The last 3 budget years have been
Tough.
extremely tough, yeah.
Mike, did you have a final thought?
Yeah, you know, with the, if it does come to play, the elimination of the Federal Department of Education, that was formed with really to implement the No Child Left Behind Act. And if we're no longer looking at any federal involvement in education in the United States, then that can't be a good thing. I mean, that's not going to help the states, it's not going to help anybody. So if you do talk to your legislatures, consider that in terms of, you know, what's going to happen to local schools. We may not get a lot of federal money, but there's a lot of money that comes to the state that eventually makes its way to us. And if that money all dries up, it's not coming to us anymore either, so.
Fair statement. I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you very much.
And energy and information
Thank you all.
tonight. Thank you very much. We can communicate and get those questions that we outlined
Yeah,
tonight.
so if,
How many budgets have you presented?
this is my 5th year, so I started in December of
And you said this
2020.
year,
Well, the
because I know you
CEO
haven't
was
been
here.
around.
Sometimes we've had it from the board itself, but it's nice to see the CEO discuss the budget.
Oh,
of the
he's always been here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, folks, have a good night.
Thank you.
Appreciate it
Thank
again.
you, everybody.
Doing a carpool on Monday?
There's a lot of people.
Use one of the vans.
Need a driver. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Can I,
Kathy.
can I just make sure that if the HR is approved and the fields, if 2 new DPW directors, how that affects the school budget, maybe in a positive way with the fields leaving,
Yeah.
or
We'll-
something.
yeah, I
or
mean, we could talk about that
HR,
during the
'cause I know there's a
articles.
couple of staff that do HR there, and if it's going under, just make sure you don't use it.
We'll be covering that in the
Just to make
article
one
review.
point too, before anybody got here,
Yeah.
Mr. Kozinski was saying he's unwell. So if we could maybe move it along for him, I'm sure he's not feeling too good either.
Well, he still has to answer some questions.
No.
Yeah, so let's keep moving.
Preliminary draft.
John Stedman, Conservation Commission.
Take some time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We're going to postpone meeting minute approvals. Joyce, do you have anything for COA, for liaison updates? Capital Planning is meeting tomorrow to review the report, and then on the 29th, what's the next one? 26th, Jonathan Berry will be here to present, and those are all the capital requests that comes out to the 480,000 roughly.
Does the town do the school capital request as well?
Yes, we don't rank it,
Okay.
but we did include it in our conversation. In fact, Vertex and TAPA Architecture came out and gave the exact same presentation that the SBC had to the capital planning, which was great. It was down at the room down there, and Jonathan has outlined that, and we're going to be commenting that and putting our input in it tomorrow, because it is going to be, there's a few things to think about. One, this is the biggest request in history, and two, how does that impact the town for 30 years out from now? So that's kind of the discussion, and that's why it's included in the write-up for the FinCom report under the CPC.
There was a meeting today of the Millis School Building Committee. They're looking at holding a forum at the school, high school, roughly right now, May 1st, putting together information, packets and so forth, of information. They can't be a proponent of anything, but they're putting together the information that would be necessary. So let's look forward to seeing that as well.
And Mr. Chair, on the
Perfect. Yep.
CPC, the other CPC.
Yep, go ahead.
People might have heard or seen at the Oak Grove Farmhouse, Springtown meeting, the CPC funds gave $50,000 for a new roof and some work, and they're starting on that.
Oh, fantastic.
So then it would be, I don't think, they didn't tell me today it was, but a tenant will come in then, it'll
Great.
be available for,
Is that right?
They did it in like one day.
yeah.
I go by there every once in a while, but I must have missed
Well, it's the
it.
back of the roof.
All right, old business, new business. I want to talk about a couple things here. I'm going to slide in articles here. If we can maybe just do some assigning real quick.
Do we still have Mr. Kuzinski? Was he
Yeah,
on
Mike,
the-
you're still here, right? Are you hanging in there? Can you hang in a couple more minutes?
I most certainly will.
Okay. You're probably a
take
half a
tomorrow
bottle of
off.
NyQuil down, but we'll get you before you start talking loopy. You said you wanted to talk about the warrant, possibly the articles a little bit, so I turn it over to you, and you can pick up where you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go through rather briefly, considering the hour, but certainly I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee has on any particular article. So the list of the draft warrant you have with the articles was fully reviewed by the select board at their meeting on Monday. And
Okay.
They did ultimately vote to include those articles that are listed there, even though some of them obviously need some work.
Yep.
Their intent is to have those articles included in the warrant. The first 7 articles are the standard articles that we usually have in our town meetings.
Yep.
You've got unpaid bills, additional wages and expenses for FY '25, the FY '26 operating budget, the sewer, water, and stormwater enterprise funds,
Yep.
and the consent agenda, which includes any amendments to the personnel plan, Board of Health appointing authority, revolving funds, and the community preservation fund. So I don't know if there's any questions on those first 7.
Yeah, go ahead. Kathy has a
I do,
question.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on the consent agenda. I'm just hearing from people that the amendments to the personnel plan may have discussion, so I'm wondering if the select board had thought to pull that aside and not be one,
They'll take a look at that.
okay.
You mean to break it into 2 different articles?
Separate the personnel plan from a consent article.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll certainly take a look at that, and again, they'll be discussing that on their meeting of 31st, so that'll be part of that discussion on if they want to change how they address that particular item. So Article 8 is the capital items.
Yep, I'll take that, if that's okay with everybody. And we can go through the list later.
And, so there's currently 7 items that the Capital Planning Committee has reviewed. And the CPC is gonna be presenting their report to the select board at their next meeting on March 31st. And then the board will decide, how many of those will
Yeah.
go forward after that.
Yeah, I think, right, 31st for the select board and then the 26th for FinCom. I think Jonathan's presenting to us next week, right?
Yes, he's presenting first and
Yeah.
then on to the select board on the 31st.
Yep.
The next item is for the authorization of the lease of 2 new police cruisers. The funding for that is actually in the police department's operational budget, so this actually isn't a money article, it's just a borrowing authorization article. Article 10 is to propose consideration of a special act to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption for school building construction projects. Just to touch upon that briefly, the town of Hopkinton last year pursued a special act for that, and they were successful in getting that approved. So the select board feels that's worthy of a detailed discussion and consideration, especially considering the fact that we have the largest project in the town's history coming up this fall, and it is a school building project. So they've had discussion on that, and at this point, they certainly seem supportive of that staying on the warrant. The next article, Article 11, is to consider a special act to change the position of the town clerk from elected to appointed. And I believe the select board's approach here would be to have the town meeting article, to have a local ballot question, and if both of those come back in the affirmative, they would petition the state legislature to make a change, which would probably take about a year. How long generally the special acts take to go through the legislature. So, and again, I can certainly go into that in more detail down the road. The next item, Article 12, is to establish tri-board meetings. This was a recommendation from the financial management review done by the Division of Local Services to change our bylaws to add that in as a permanent committee, formal committee of the town made up of the select board, the school committee, and the finance committee and recommend that they meet at least 4 times a year, roughly quarterly.
So, just to interrupt, so this would make it more mandatory versus optional?
Well, it would make it so it's a legal formal committee that is made up of the members of those 3 bodies. This is actually not that uncommon. There are a lot of other communities that have taken this approach.
For years.
Especially communities that have run into difficult financial situations to try to address those before they get too close to their town meetings, to be able to exchange information and work on budget strategies for the upcoming fiscal year. I mean, that's the main the main driver of it, but certainly other areas for cooperation and collaboration between all the departments is also a driver.
Okay, we can talk more about that as we do our research.
Yes. Article 13 was a request from the chief of police. This really has come out of post. A lot of towns that have police officers or retired police officers that mainly just work for the town in the role of a detail officer, to be classified as traffic constables. It does, it really has to do with the post regulations and how those are properly applied. So I do expect some additional information to be forthcoming from us and the chief in the next few weeks on that.
Okay.
Article 14.
Yep, keep going.
Article 14 is the sale of town-owned land. I think on the town's website, we do have a map and a list of different town-owned properties. We've been going through those properties to see which ones would be appropriate for disposal and sale, to see if we can put them back on the town's tax rolls. I know the fall town meeting approved two different parcels, and we're moving forward with the process of disposing of those now. The board just approved that last week, and we'll be sending that out to bid over the next month. But these are all the other town parcels that at this point we've determined that that no longer have a useful purpose for the town and should be considered surplus and disposed of. And we'll have that list for you. Maybe not by your meeting next week, but the week after, we'll have that list.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I'd just like to, there's been two presenters, both the school tonight and the fire chief, that mentioned Cassidy Field as a sale to the Commonwealth, I believe, for senior housing. And that hasn't been discussed at a select board meeting, so I'm just curious how other departments know to put this on their budget requests, and unless, it's,
That particular item is not connected to this at all, so that piece of land would not be connected to this article.
okay, thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Kaczynski. These are just those surplus pieces. This isn't town-owned,
Yes.
town paid $1 million on, you're giving it away.
Like the
No,
landlocked
right.
Okay.
that we had like last
Mostly
Okay.
parcels that are, 2 or 3 acres or less, and many of them are landlocked. They might only have any value to abutters. Some of them might have some wetland on them, so their value as far as what the town could get for them is maybe limited, but they're really, we don't see any purpose for the town to hang on to them if there are butters that are interested in acquiring them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next two are zoning bylaws. The first one listed is to amend the special flood hazard district and zoning map. FEMA updated their zoning maps recently, and we do have to come into compliance with that. I'm not the expert in that area, so if you want to delve into that deeper, I can certainly have Mr. Weiss, and we can ask folks from the planning board to come and meet with the finance committee if you'd like to meet with them.
I'll put that down as a possibility.
Just read FEMA's rules.
Yeah.
And the next one, Mr. Chairman, is for amending the zoning bylaw in regards to accessory dwelling units. This is directly in response to the MBTA zoning law and those requirements. We're trying to button up. The change in the law has basically opened up a whole new area of available zoning for people to build. And we feel we need to button up our bylaws to put some reasonable restrictions on that, to the extent that's allowed by state law.
Well, if I could also.
Go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
So there was a affordable housing bill that was passed and signed by the governor. Most towns had rules associated with accessory dwelling units, so-called in-law apartments. Most of the towns, and I don't know about Millis, but most of the towns had a restriction. It could only be a family member and so forth.
Attached also.
And attached. The new rules now would allow for detached buildings. They could be rented to anybody. There's no longer a requirement for it to be a family member. So I think that, it makes sense that we now look at our zoning bylaws to
Right.
both come into compliance with the state rules,
Yep.
but also, as Mike said, take a look at it further.
900 square feet.
900 or half the
If you
value.
meet,
or
if
half
you
the-
meet sideline and rear line, you can put that up in your
or-
property.
Or half the size.
That's what keeps in-laws happy, 900 square feet.
Not in-laws, anyone.
Anyone.
anyone at this point, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
There
up to
are-
the building inspector or the ZBA if you want to put more than one on.
Gotcha. Continue, Mike, thank you.
So the next item is reacceptance of post-employment benefits fund. I think this was a recommendation given to us by our auditors. And we'll definitely have more details on that, on final language that coming down the road. I'll need to have some further discussion with the finance director and a few other folks to, in order to fully go over that with the committee. The next four are pretty much our different funds that we utilize to manage different costs and funds in the town. The first one, the unemployment insurance fund. I don't think we've had a lot of claims too recently, but obviously the school did have some layoffs, and we are going to be asking for an amount of money to be transferred to that fund, and again, the exact amount we'll have shortly. The next one, Chapter 41, Section 111F, Injury Leave Indemnity Fund, that's primarily for police and firefighters. Again, we're reviewing that, and we'll have a recommended number shortly. The OPEB fund, we do, I think, annually try to put at least $50,000 into that fund. So we'll be looking at putting some funds there. And then the stabilization fund, that's our standard end of warrant article to put whatever revenues remaining into that line item. And we do want to keep that solidly over 5%. And you know, as our budget grows, we have to increase that on a regular basis.
Question? Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Mr. Kaczynski, on the OPEB, is the town current on what it owes every year, at least?
No, I mean, do you mean that
Way low.
what they recommend for full funding within?
No, not full funding, just whatever yearly is required.
There's actually nothing legally required. What we've been informed by our auditors is that they really do like to see some
More.
infusion of funds into that every year. And that varies based upon the financial health of the different communities, what they can put in there. Some communities, there's a few communities that are near fully funded. That's a rarity. Most communities put in, depending on the size of the community, 50 to 1,000 to 200,000 a year. And I think that the general plan among many towns and other town administrators and managers I've talked to is that once the county retirement pension system is fully funded, that the funds we currently use for that, we can look at transferring those funds into OPEB at that point, which is a significant amount of money.
It is.
I'm sure.
The pension fund. So it's been a struggle for most communities under the strain of Prop 2.5 to find a lot of additional money to put into the OPEB. But we've managed to put at least some amount in it every year for, I think, at least 6 or 7 years.
And finally, Mr. Kaczynski, how are you feeling the effect of the 11% increase in the insurance?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we'll have the exact numbers very soon for you on that, but it's significant. You know, and also looking at roughly 11% increase in our pension assessment from Norfolk County. So that those are big hits.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Those are
Yeah.
things, those are things fairly beyond our control, though.
Correct.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
We can trim around the edges, but in large part, we just have to try to work with the county. We've tried to have discussions with the county about trying to spread those impacts out. We've had limited success with that, but the effort's been made, and we're going to continue to be working with the county retirement system to be cognizant of the fact that their decisions have real-world implications in towns that have limited budgets.
Agreed. On the town side and personal side. Anyone have any final questions for Mike so he can sail
rest,
off
Mike.
to Never Never
Thank you for
Land?
hanging in there, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, feel better.
Oh, I wanted to see how tough you were by holding on after the school presentation. You passed the test. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, last item. I know we're on fumes. Did everybody see on the Millis website and what Bob alluded to on Monday, March 24th, the Ways and Means Committee? So I started drafting a letter. Pete had a good idea. Well, a good idea. It's good.
Don't worry about it.
I
You
know.
shouldn't take credit for
I know, I can't. But I think it would be great to put a letter together and send it off to our legislators, and I can pass it around to everybody, and if anybody wants to add any input, I'm all for that. I'm not,
There'll be a letter as a committee.
yeah,
No, that's fantastic.
And you can write yourself, too, as
Oh, I've already had, but
yeah.
that's great.
I mean, I
Wonderful.
Good idea.
I got a one pager here already. So once I polish it up a little bit more, I'll send it on to everybody, and if people want to add, feel free, and let's make it a joint effort, and then we can send away.
Thank you, John.
You bet.
Nice idea from both of you.
Thanks.
I'm an idea guy, he's an executioner.
I'm an implementer. All right.
You've been promoted to Idea Pete.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, hang on.
However, there was a.
Yes, into the mic.
Condition in the idea, and that, I'm not sure that unless we vote on it, you can issue a letter from the committee. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it would be prudent
I'll find out.
to
Well,
vote on it.
why don't we vote on
And
it?
Say it
I don't
again?
know- And I don't know that you have time to do that if this thing's on the 24th.
Can we vote to authorize the chair to send a letter on behalf?
Yeah, I think it's just sending it in.
Can we-
So what happens, so I attended the select board meeting on Monday, some school members, some select members, others, whoever wants to attend this.
Right.
They can, so it's open. I will be doing college tours, so I won't be around for it. But
Is
this
one
is,
of the tours at UMass?
no, unfortunately, otherwise I would, yeah, so.
Bring the family.
Yeah. But feel free, if you guys got bandwidth and time in your schedule, feel free.
They make it convenient location, don't
But
they?
I think, letters, attending, having administrators attend this, hopefully we'll get more money than we're getting now, but we'll see what
So
happens.
can we vote tonight to approve the writing of a letter?
Authorize the chair to write.
Yeah.
Authorize the chair to write a letter on behalf of the members of the Finance Committee.
Second.
Thank you.
There's been a motion seconded for the chair of the Finance Committee to write a letter to the Massachusetts Ways and Means Committee, or no, excuse me, to our legislators regarding Chapter 70 funding and state aid to Millis. Discussion. I don't have any discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Abstain? I said aye. All right.
It says aye.
That's an aye? Okay, Jody. All right, it passes. I will work on that and keep everyone in the loop and make sure we do that so we're not violating anything to get a letter out. That's all I have. Any other, we
Move to
good?
adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconds?
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Jody, we got you. Have a good night.
See you, Jody.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, you're not going to assign these?